Today, we're going to cover specific examples of cultural bias and outright lying in reporting about me personally and the American Redoubt political movement. Welcome to the Charles Carroll Society Show. I am your host, the self-appointed Bard of the American Redoubt. Recently, we've made several videos and covered several topics talking about the cultural, religious, and political bias that has been demonstrated by American journalists who many of them seem to doubt that it really exists. We covered how the Southern Poverty Law Center of Alabama is an incredible far-left smear machine that has directly motivated domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism. The SPLC reporters have physically attacked people they are covering and don't like. And then the SPLC, I have demonstrated how they lie and distort people they politically, culturally, or religiously agree with. The SPLC has stared too long into the abyss. That's my opinion. The SPLC has become a new version of the Democratic hate machine that motivated their most lucrative opponent, the Ku Klux Klan. We have also covered the largest media scandal in recent years, when Der Spiegel reporter came to Red State America and wrote a pure fictional piece presenting rural conservatives in a terrible light. Apparently he's been doing this for years. But in this case, he got busted thanks to two hard-working town residents who spent a year of their time finding out all the erroneous reporting that this guy had done. Der Spiegel has yet to accept that the overwhelming members of journalists and their fact-finding groups, or whatever they want to call it, are progressive, and that this unanimity, this one thought that is overwhelming, contributes to their cultural, political, and even religious bias against conservatives and Orthodox Christians they cover. In this video, we're going to show how these facts, how this what we've seen in a larger kind of arena actually affects me personally and the American Redoubt. We're going to cover how local reporters, other than the SPLC, have lied about me personally, have lied about the American Redoubt in general, and they have demonstrated cultural and political bias against conservatives and Christians. I don't really know if they have a religious bias, but they have definitely demonstrated cultural and political bias. In a 27 January 2016 article, a former Democratic person, this guy was a speechwriter or something, he worked for a Democratic governor named Chris Carlson, wrote an article that was syndicated. Syndicated means that he wrote an article and I guess a bunch of local Idaho papers purchased the article and it showed up all over Idaho. And that article was titled, "Raising Serious Doubts About the American Redoubt." In that article, this guy Chris said of the American Redoubt, "They call themselves the American Redoubt movement, but they bear an uncanny resemblance to the survivalist and posse comitatus types that operated in Idaho in the 1980s. Really? How? I actually had to go look up what posse comitatus was. Why does one group of people who said we bear any kind of a similarity? I guess he did. Back to him. The agendas are remarkably similar. The primacy of the U.S. Constitution. Chris, I hate to tell you, but as far as I know, the Constitution is the law of the land. It is it's the primary. Is there a higher law in the United States of America than the U.S. Constitution? So I think that's actually just federal fact. Support for so-called open carry of firearms. Open carry of firearms is the law in most states of all 50 states. I don't think the American Redoubt has a big push for it. Neither do many patriot groups that I know because it's already the law. And people support it all over the place. But I mean, I don't think it's any particular thing here. People on the right support firearms. They're your property. Carry them any way you want. Repeal of the 17th Amendment, which is the direct election of U.S. senators by state legislatures. Well, actually, Chris, that is the literal plank from the Idaho Republican Party. That's not an extremist group. That is the platform of the Idaho Republican State Party. And no groups, it's just that's what people want. Now, it's never going to happen, or most likely not going to happen, but that's their objective. We believe that there's an out of balance, and that the concept of federalism, or the states should have primary control or influence, or primary influence over the lawmaking capability of their people in their states. And we believe that, Republicans actually believe it's out of whack, and thus states should have more power. And one way to give that to it is the states actually appoint the state senators. So Chris continues, adamant opposition to immigrants. That, my friend, is a lie. Please, the concept is that the American Redoubt is defined. Even though James Rawls is a little bit hesitant to admit this, it is my clear opinion that the American Redoubt is defined in his precepts that he invented. He said, American Redoubt, here's what we stand for. It would be like the platform of the party if it was a party, but it's not specific. It's these philosophy. And James Rawls goes so far to say, hey, if you don't really believe in these precepts, then why don't you go find somewhere else to live if you got someplace to do? I mean, he says that. So please tell me in the precepts of anything he's written about the American Redoubt, of the American Redoubt page, where it even doesn't even mention immigrants. It doesn't. He has a lot more stuff about self-sufficiency and family preparedness than he does about anything I've read about immigrants. Abolishing agencies like the EPA. Once again, Chris, that actually is the Republican position of the RNC. That's the platform of the nationwide Republican Party. I'll show you this link I found. They want to reduce it from something to some kind of committee or whatever. I mean, the point is that Republicans' platform is the reduction of the government and its influence over people's lives. So they look at different agencies to reduce. Department of Education, Department of EPA. So this is literally from the platform of the nationwide Republican Party. The supremacies of county sheriffs as the highest figure in the criminal justice system. Well, once again, hate to tell you, Chris, the sheriffs are the highest authority in the state criminal law enforcement in their counties. That's why they're there. And as anybody who's studied the matter knows that rural sheriffs have kind of a special place in the hearts of a lot of rural places. These guys generally know people. They know the area. I mean, especially you get to smaller towns, these guys are running around babysitting, delivering babies. I mean, they are truly lawmen of a different type. And so people put a lot more, the county sheriff, can come in and endorse a mayor or not in a lot of places. So he is in the state law. And by the way, just to let Chris know a little bit, what he's trying to say is that there is a movement that's not in any way connected to the American Redoubt, by the way, nothing. But there is a movement of people who want to talk about constitutional sheriffs. And a constitutional sheriff concept, as far as I believe it, because it's not a part of the American Redoubt, is that sheriffs don't enforce unconstitutional law. And then you see all the little liberals and progressives flip on the floor like fish out of water. Oh my goodness, they can't do that. Well, in the truth, this is one of the primary reasons that we fought the Civil War. It was constitutional and law that local law enforcement had to cooperate with Southern slave hunters. That was in the Constitution. They were talking about I forget in the Constitution. If I can find it, I'll put a link here where it talks about this. And then they passed something called the Fugitive Slave Act, and then they strengthened it later on in somewhere similar to rolling up to the Civil War. Well, a lot of the northern lawmen, a lot of the northern states said, we're not doing that. That's what he said. The Congress voted and passed this law. It was in the Constitution, and the local law enforcement said, we are not going to help. We're not going to tell slave hunters. These are bounty hunters from the South who were sent up into northern free states to hunt down Africans who had escaped, because they weren't American citizens at the time, Africans who escaped, and return them to bondage. And there are sheriffs and other lawmen. I don't know if they were called sheriffs at the time, but they are lawmen who said, no, we won't do that. And that concept of saying that because the free states were saying, we're not going to help the southern states in any way, shape, or form enforce that law, which is immoral. That's one of the things that literally is one of the reasons that the South said we can't stay in this union, because you guys are, encouraging our property to flee. So this concept of local law enforcement having a say on how they use their resources is literally part of the American fabric as far back as pre-slavery times, pre-Civil War times. And they did some good there. But again, has nothing to do with the American Redoubt. Then he continues, the forefathers of the American Redoubt used to embrace racism. What? It's like saying the forefathers of Judaism used to be. Who are the forefathers of Judaism? Please tell me. What's agreed upon that? Is Chris telling us? Why does he get to say that some total organization over here that has nothing to do with the American Redoubt is somehow related to the American Redoubt? Who said that? He did. He just made it up out of pure just randomness. He randomly just said, I want to say that they are related to some people who I also don't like, and you shouldn't like either. Now he says, James Rawls says racism ignored reason, because it does. They say they welcome all they welcome all and there's no discrimination against minorities. But that's easy to say when you have very few minorities. That's what he says about the American Redoubt. Chris, I'm a minority. I'm absolutely certain. I bet you I could walk into almost any patriot organization in the Mountain West. And you know what? People sometimes roll their eyes. Oh, there's Alex trying to become a YouTube star. Whatever it is, I'm a minority. And there's not a single person involved who swings a Gadsden flag who is not, especially the people I've met, who's not welcoming to myself, welcoming to my children. Not one. Not one. Now, if you can go look on my website, you can see that we've had issues with some National Socialists who are racist. But in general, the people who wave the Gadsden flag, I am a minority. I am one of the primary voices of the American Redoubt movement. And guess what? Now that I'm back in the mix here, I'm trying to make as many minorities as I can. So if you're good looking, fill out a little profile, send it to me. Contact right there and we'll talk about it. Just joking. Chris Carlson, who was a Democratic operative and still is, has never spoken with me, has never spoken with any of the primary voice of the Redoubt when writing this piece. Where did he get this information from? And why do you think that he didn't think to just pick up the phone, send an email and ask anyone to say, hey, is this true? Who are you guys? Talk to the people who are the American Redoubt. I have an idea of why Chris didn't do that. It's because he has a cultural and political bias against conservatives and Republicans. Almost everything he talked about is a Republican platform. This article was a complete fraud. Syndicated all over Idaho, never corrected. Next liberal local reporter who has attacked myself or the American Redoubt directly. Betsy Russell of the Spokane Review wrote an article on 15 May 2016 titled, Redoubt Movement Helps Push North Idaho Politics to Extreme Right. Well, really? Extreme? This is what she said about one of the things she said about me in her article. She said, she's talking about what I would consider a very liberal Republican who was elected from North Idaho. She said, Barron slammed Kehoe as a liberal, authoritarian progressive and accused her of a gun grabbing and wanting to tax more so she can spend more on her socialist, pro-homosexual union allies working in government schools. Okay, let's take a look at that. Sean Kehoe is one of the lowest ranked Republicans in Idaho by NARA. I think she is around 70% the last time she ran. But she was rated 71%, one of the highest Republicans by Planned Parenthood. So to call her gun grabbing, the NRA agrees. To call her a pro-abortion candidate, the Planned Parenthood agrees. She's one of the highest ranked Republicans in North Idaho. She was endorsed by the AFL-CIO. And as everyone here knows, the AFL-CIO has endorsed all type of pro-homosexual measures coast to coast. So they're pro-homosexual union allies. What's wrong with that statement? Now, I'll tell you something. When Betsy wrote that article, she quickly picked up the phone and called Shawnee Kehoe and got her opinion on it. Did she reach out to me? Did she want to know my opinion on my own words? She did not. She just cut and paste from my public blog, and then she went to Sean Kehoe and said, what do you think about this? She never attempted to give her readers a balanced view of the situation. Now, This report by Betty was completely her opinion with Sean Kehoe's direct quotes about it. Now, why do you think that Betsy would never pick up the phone and call anybody, email, and actually get both sides of the story? Why do you think that is? And, just put out her own biased opinion. I got an idea. She appears to have a personal malice against conservatives. Why did this happen? Because Betsy Russell has a cultural and political bias against conservatives and Republicans. Next up, in an article written by Kelly Wally of the Daily Beast recently wrote an article titled, "Republican Lawmaker Accused of Breaking the Law to Fund Hate Groups." This is not about me. This is about another guy that we happen to know who's not officially related in any way to the American Redoubt. The media just makes that up, but that's fine. He is pretty conservative. His name is Matt Shea. He's a state representative for Washington State. Who said that these groups are hate groups? Who gave them that terminology? Why, progressives and Democrats and the SPLC. Did anybody else say that, hey, the SPLC is a far left, highly partisan organization that has donated nearly exclusively or exclusively, to the best of my research, to Democratic and liberal causes? They are a partisan group. This Daily Beast reporter provides no context. She calls the American Redoubt, check this out, a fringe secessionist and survivalist movement who encourages their followers, mostly conservative Christians, to migrate to the inland Northwest where they will supposedly wait out the collapse of society. Absolutely lies, all lies. She defames the American Redoubt by calling it secessionist. I've already gone over why the other things were incorrect, but she calls it a secessionist group. Now, our good friend Webster's defined this as one who joins the secessionist organization or maintain that secession is a right. That's, to me, a fairly benign understanding of secessionists. Someone who believes that secession is a right. I believe a lot of people on the right would believe that secession is a right. Heck, 42% of American voters are concerned about a civil war in this nation, and secession is actually supported more among blacks than it is about whites. So there's a lot of people who believe secession is a right, especially a human right, although the Supreme Court has said that suddenly states have no right. Even though the Constitution is completely silent on the point of secession, the Supreme Court has walked itself in like it always has and says, we have decided that there's no right to secession. So I find that, Webster's a benign. Does she mean secessionists that way? But a more common definition of secessionists can be found on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia defines it that groups that like to advocate the state of cultural, ethnic, tribal, or religious or racial government or gender separation from the larger group. While it often refers to full political succession, separatist groups may want nothing more than greater autonomy. So does this liberal reporter describe radical feminism as a secessionist group? Does this liberal reporter describe blacks who want their own class and their own graduation as secessionist groups? She does not. She uses it as a slur. So we don't know what she means by secessionist, but you can bet that she always means because she doesn't apply it to groups that she likes, she applies it to groups that she dislikes. So you can bet that it's something that she's implying that it's negative. The SPLC itself has maligned Washington State Representative Matt Shea and misrepresented his political beliefs, calling him far right, which is another extremely ill-defined term. Again, our friend Webster's defined the term as a group of people whose political views are the most conservative. Well, that's actually a fairly accurate statement about most people. The most conservative? Yes, we are very conservative, very traditionalist, very orthodox. That is true. But that is a fairly, again, benign definition. But once again, if you look at Wikipedia, a much more common definition of far right is very similar to calling Matt Shea a racist national socialist. And that is absolutely false. What do you think she meant? She didn't define it. So that's how the progressives kind of like sprinkle that out there. They'll say, oh, he's far right. And people, they know, hey, Webster doesn't say it's, but they know that most people say, oh, what is he, a Nazi? And that's what they're implying. That is cleanly what they're implying. The Daily Beast reporter also said that Matt Shea has given to racist organizations. Like I said before, who decided they're racist? Who decided they're hate groups? The SPLC. And the Daily Beast reporter never once tell their readers that the SPLC are partisan leftists, which I've shown in a video previously that I'll try to link here, is an organization who's opposed to Orthodox Christians, which they have admitted, and opposed to conservatives. They're like, of course we're liberal, because we think liberalism is more like refined or whatever, or advanced. Okay, well, just because you like that political opinion doesn't make it right. Well, what can we do about it? I always like to try to end, I'm going to always try to end my videos from now on with what can we do about it? Literally, that's one of the things I like to say in my podcast. What can we do about it? I would like to give people detailed and highly, encourage you guys to take action. Partisans, every one of you. Everyone, in my opinion, should encourage all journalists by basically doing letters to the editor, reporting, comments on their thing, to stop quoting the biased and extremely liberal SPLC. When they quote the SPLC, you know that, especially if they do it without telling their readers that the SPLC statements are just their opinions and that the SPLC is a highly liberal partisan organization which has religious and political bias against Orthodox Christians and conservatives. If they don't give that context, then you know that journalist is being a liar. That journalist is not trying to report the truth, because the SPLC is a partisan organization. When you say SPLC, people remember the SPLC, the old one, like, fighting the Klan. Yay, good, fight the Klan. Not now, fighting Christians, fighting conservatives. That's what the SPLC has become, because they beat the Klan. But they want to still motivate liberals to give heavily. So they keep spewing out that there's a billion hate groups all over the place and they're lynching blacks left and right. No, there's some bad things happen, but not like the 1920s, I'll tell you that much. I'd rather live now than the 1940s. You can also point out my video to other reporters, which I, again, will link here, and I'll try to put at the end screen, which talks about the SPLC and provides all kind of reference. In there, there's a thing that says show notes, and there's links that you can sit there and go right to these articles where the SPLC is shown, admitting that they only use their opinion, that they are leftist, that they're liberal. They don't investigate leftist groups. They only focus on the right. That means they're partisan. So when you send them the link to my video and go, here it is, the SPLC shrew, because sometimes, although it doesn't really matter, sometimes I wonder if all these liberal journalists, because they live in their little echo bubble that they only talk to each other, realize how far left the SPLC is and how far left they are. So point it out. Keep pointing it out. I say one of the other things that you can do, what can we do, is write your own piece. It's 500 words, sit down and say, here's where this journalist factually is wrong. And throw that out there. They always like, oh, we have all these fact checkers. Okay, we can do that too. But write it, share it, give it to me, and I'll try to post it on my main blog, self-hosted, by the way, Charles Carroll Society. Or if you like somebody else better, give it to them and let them post it. I will try to do everything I can to get it out. Follow me on the various social medias. I'm encouraging you to follow other independent media personalities and commenters that you like, and write down, say, here, I read this article and this article is a lie because of this. And then when you show that, we'll share that. And people will continue to start to see how terribly bad the state of journalism is. And it's almost like I tell you, it's no joke. It's very similar to the white racist behavior of the 1940s. I'm sorry, this is the simple truth. And they won't see it. They don't see it. They're swimming in this fishbowl going, you're prejudiced. And they're like, what are you talking about? And you're looking around, and you're going, look around, dude. You have a sign outside that says only white people can apply for work. So you essentially have created a system where only progressives can become journalists. And the evidence is that, not that you put a sign out there, the evidence of that are that journalists seem to be, there's significant data that suggests journalists are overwhelmingly liberal. And even though people point this out, they simply will not change. So we will defend ourselves. 26% of Americans consider themselves conservative, or 28 or something, and about approximately 25% of Americans consider themselves liberal. Something like half this nation voted for President Trump. Half of journalism does not support President Trump. And I don't believe that they will change. So as a capitalist system, We Patreon, although that's a thing I got to write another video about, and we continue to move. We literally continue to support independent conservative commentators. Please like, share, and subscribe to the show. Giving a thumb up and sharing this video really does help it show up higher in the YouTube search results. That's something that you can do. And remember, long live Christ, Jesus Christ, the only King. Or in Spanish, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey, Viva Cristo Rey y the Virgin Guadalupe.